I'm Bill Baker, Sales Manager here at Zumasys, and I'd really like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you today. Looks like we're good on the visual. Now that I know you can use the chat, can you, again, anybody who just joined us, can you please put the reason why you're attending and if there's anything you want to learn, okay? All right, today we're excited to have you discuss how to modernize your PICK multi-value system while keeping, what works for you. We hope by the end of today, you'll have a better understanding that modernization can be incremental, risk-free, and we'll show you how businesses like yours are successfully modernizing their PICK multi-value systems. Joining us today will be Corey Luckow, Corey Luckow, President at Zumasys, Mike Wright, CTO, Shawn McGrath, CIO from Eagle Group, and Brent Blair, Encompass Supply Chain. Sorry. Okay. All right. Without further ado, I'm sure Corey will do a better job than me at the intro, but I'm going to turn over to Corey, President at Zumasys.
Hey, thank you, Bill. So everyone, my name is Corey Luckow. I'm the president of Zumasys, and I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you today. It's been a while since our last session, and a lot has evolved both in the PICK market and here at Zumasys. In our previous webinar, we explored strategies to future-proof PICK apps and shared success stories from companies that made the leap to modern web applications while keeping their core logic intact. That progress laid the foundation for today's conversation. Back in 2021, we introduced a framework for helping PICK systems thrive, not just survive. We focused on 4 key steps. And fast forward 4 years, and we've seen those ideas come into action, both with customers and inside Zumasys. Today, we're excited to show you real-world examples of what that looks like. For those of you who don't know us, Zumasys is based in Orange County, California, with over 40+ employees across the United States. We're half software, half services, which means we don't just sell Rover ERP to manufacturers and distributors. We also help support a growing number of PICK multi-value customers with everyday tasks and modernization efforts with our Rover Business Suite product. Zumasys started in 2000 as an infrastructure and hosting company by Joe Cupp and Paul Giobbi. Over time, we became the owners of JBase, OpenQM, and AccuTerm, tools you all know very well. But we realized something. Customers didn't just need new tools, they needed new outcomes. They needed modernization without disruption. That's when we acquired 7 different vertical software providers, including Rover ERP, which put us in the position many of you face today. How to modernize your PICK multi-value application, which Mike will talk about later. Rover gave us a way to bring modern UX, integration, flexibility to a traditional PICK system. And that journey led us to Rover Business Suite, a modular web-based application that allows us to extend the life and value of your existing system. So this isn't just a product story, it's a story of how we've evolved, just like you're being asked to evolve to meet a new generation of business needs. So was this shift the right move? For us, the answer is yes, because the results speak for themselves. We've helped over 15 customers move forward. 10 are fully live on Rover ERP. 5 others are using Rover Business Suite modules alongside their PICK systems as part of a phased approach. And most importantly, we've preserved the custom logic that makes these businesses unique while giving them modern web interfaces, real-time reporting, and a future-proof architecture. As one customer put it, moving to Rover was like upgrading from a rotary phone to a smartphone. That's the kind of leap we're enabling. This success confirms we're on the right path, not just as a software vendor, but as a modernization partner. So building on our narrative of growth and evolution, this slide represents the robust portfolio of Zumasys products, a testament to our commitment to versatile and powerful solutions for business. So why did we do it? It's the same reason you're here trying to figure out how to do it. Your PICK system is not a liability, it's an asset. The customizations you've built over decades aren't just tweaks, they're strategic investments. And they've created automation, efficiency, and the competitive advantages that differentiate your business. That's why so many organizations hesitate when they hear the word modernization. They worry that they'll lose the embedded value. At Zumasys, we believe modernization should preserve and extend that value, not just replace it. And if you've been running a PICK system, you'll know that what stability really means. While the tech world has chased trends and rewritten systems every few years, your environment has quietly delivered decades of reliable, low-maintenance performance. This is a rare story, one where the system didn't become obsolete just because the market said it should. You've benefited from an architecture that prioritized durability over disruption. And at Zumasys, we understand that history is not something to discard, it's a strategic advantage. That's why our mission is not to rip and replace, it's to help you protect what works while adapting to the innovations that will define the next decade. To that, in order to do this, though, we also need to acknowledge where this friction lies, what the pain points the organizations are feeling. So many PICK systems are aging. Surprise. The challenge isn't just the technology, it's the people. The original developers may not be around anymore. They may be retired. They may be unavailable or just partially available. And new hires struggle to get up to speed on the terminal-based systems. You end up in a survival mode, just keeping the lights on, but with no clear path forward. And that makes any talk of modernization feel extremely daunting. Problem number 2, data blind spots. For many PICK systems, reporting is a black box. There's no easy way to get real-time insights into labor, inventory, production, and the rest of the data. You're forced to rely on gut instinct or manual workarounds, and when what you really need is on-demand self-service access to the data. That lack of visibility creates delays, inefficiencies, and decisions made in the dark. And in today's environment, not being able to see what's happening in your business in real time isn't just frustrating, it's a risk. If users, problem number 3, if users can't get access to the data or the system stops evolving, what happens? Users go around it, pulling data into Excel, signing up for a new SaaS application, this shadow IT, building one-off processes and creating silos. At first, it feels like a workaround, but over time, these patches or these workarounds become the system, and that's the problem. The more people rely on manual tools outside the platform, the more fragile your operations become. When experienced staff leave, they take that knowledge with them, and new hires are left scattered, undocumented processes, and worse, when the system isn't the source of truth, decision-making suffers. You're reacting to outdated or incomplete data. So the question isn't whether your current setup worked in the past, it's can it still support where you're going? And our last problem, the biggest of all, let's talk about this. This is the most dangerous, is just doing nothing. We've seen how these aging systems and growing complexity can slow a business down, but sometimes the biggest blocker isn't the technology, it's just fear of change, fear of disruption, fear of possibly breaking what works. I mean, how many times have I heard that with a customer? They just don't touch it so it doesn't break. Fear that modernization is just too big, too costly, or just too risky. And while caution is understandable, and to each his own on what level of caution they want to take, standing still is just too big of a risk. Because here's the truth. If your infrastructure is aging and unsupported, it's not a matter if something breaks, it's when. In that sense, the real danger isn't failure, it's stagnation. Falling behind because the path forward feels uncertain. That's why we're excited to share a couple of stories that we got for you today of companies that didn't stay stuck. They moved forward carefully but confidently. And to show you what that looks like, I'd like to introduce you to Shawn McGrath from Eagle Group, someone who chose to take action, starting small and building real momentum for his organization. Shawn?
Thanks, Corey. All right, I just introduce myself real quickly. I'm CIO for Eagle Group. We are a stainless steel equipment manufacturer for the food service industry. Joined about 21 months ago, so relatively new in the role at this organization. But wanted to kind of jump into what Corey was referring to. I was put into this situation, put myself into this situation to try and help this organization move forward and modernize their systems. Part of that journey essentially was understanding the current environment. And a little bit of background: I started as an RPG programmer in the mid 90s, very familiar with the IBM type systems and terminal based systems and processing. Moved off of that environment around 2012 and stepped into other areas like Salesforce, and eventually moved to a multi-billion-dollar company where I was in charge of all the M&A and merging everybody into the existing SAP system. So kind of familiar with all different technologies. I've been living more in the large modern IT infrastructure world over the last 7 years, and then got here and kind of took a step back in terms of the architecture and the modernized architecture, and had never been exposed to a multi-value system and how to do some digging on what that was. So Zumasys has been extremely helpful in getting me up to speed on what a multi-value system is. YouTube obviously as well. I think everybody goes there, and our AI friends will try and tell us what they think, and sometimes hallucinate what they think about it. But that point there is it's a system or an area that isn't very familiar to a lot of others that are coming from various aspects. I came from DB2 and HANA, and used to the columnar or the relational database, traditional relational database data set. As I got into this world, it was a step back for me to understand how the systems work and how a multi-value database works. The RPG helped me understand, basically get back to a multi-dimensional array structure, and thank God I had that kind of training and understanding. But it just brings me to my first point, like the familiarity and the ecosystem. It's a pretty closed ecosystem, and I think, as Corey pointed out earlier, it's not getting larger. It's continues to compress as folks age out and move to more of next stage of life of, hey, I want to retire and relax. So they go to part-time and eventually just start enjoying their latter years as they should. So for me, finding resources in the ecosystem that understand the ecosystem to support our current environment so we could go forward, and we had to get that baseline. So we've been somewhat successful, but we continue to look for help in various areas, and Zumasys is one of our partners who's helped us a lot. I think for us, I can move into our strategy to move forward. So I had to get my feet under me. Everything here, I was taking the role from an individual who had been here for 45 years, and she had started the data processing department, which is exactly what you would think it is. It's basically a group of people putting data into a system from paper forms. Her mentality hadn't changed much in 45 years. That's kind of how she looked at IT. So me coming in the door, every aspect of IT needed to be modernized. And those challenges are across the board here. I've got an AIX environment I'm still on. We've brought in a newer AIX system, want to go to Linux at some point. Just have to take those steps in a way that, do not disrupt our business, right? It's business first. And to be honest, IT and business, we may understand on the IT side why we need to do these things. The business is using the system and they think, while they know there's some drawbacks in it, but I think, it's rock solid, right? So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is some of the mentality. But at the leadership level, there was a realization that, hey, while we may not think it's broke now, it's going to break on its own because technology will just outpace what the system can support. So we've started to rebuild our foundation. We've got a new power server, Power 10, running on 7.3 AIX. We're in production with 7.1, so we had to do a lot of rebuilding of the base environment. That's taken us about 4 months. We're scheduled to go live this weekend with that P10 and with the new AIX environment and all of the underlying support and utilities that are in that operating system. So, eventually we'll, over the next year or two, we'll move to a Linux environment so that we can start using more of the ecosystem. That's one of the challenges I have. There isn't a lot of plugins on the multi-value side that utilize an AIX power processing architecture. So some of my challenges there. And, everything around it as well, right? We had a firewall that was older and couldn't support cloud-based. For us to do some of the things we wanted to do, I had to spin up a Power VS server in IBM's cloud, move my application up there, test it fully, and then bring it back down as we bought an on-prem server. We're a single site. We don't really need to have a cloud infrastructure per se. So we did all that, and now we're moving forward with a new hardware box that we modernized, and that's part of our roadmap to move forward. I think Corey hit on some of the aspects of shadow IT, having an individual here who basically was running IT like a data processing department. She was the rock in the river and the water flowed around it. And that's where I came to having to deal with shadow IT. And basically my CFO brought in a Power BI, and I've got individuals that came off the factory floor who learned Power BI and are trying to create their own ERP system out of Power BI. And you can only imagine the headache that's causing for me, getting my arms wrapped back around that. So, that's a core result of, taking an obstruction that IT was visualized as, and folks just saying, well, I need to do my job. I need to be able to do things. I need access to data. And they wound up building this system out from all the data they could get at any which way. And that architecture is poor. It's just dropping flat files on a Windows server, and then they pick it up and they do all kinds of transformation with it. And it's reached its scale at this point. So that's unscalable as well. So, future for us is data warehouse, warehouse management, working with Zumasys on some of that. Eventually we'll bring in the financial module, and then hopefully we'll be able to move fully to the Rover ERP platform. Well, that's what we're looking to do in the future. I could probably go on for an hour and take up this whole meeting on my challenges. But I think, back to the core, what we're doing is we're taking baby steps to move through this. As my team learns, I learn, on peeling some of the sins of the past and moving them forward. And that's our approach at this point. And, with the help of folks like Zumasys, that's kind of where we need to go, because right now, we're getting outpaced by others in our own industry as they move forward, and we need to keep up or leap them. So it's pretty much what I have at this point. I'd like to introduce Brent. He's led the transformation at Encompass Supply. He's going to share kind of the next stage of evolution where I wish I could get to, but I will get there at some point, probably over the next year and a half to two. But Brent, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you're up.
Appreciate the introduction, Shawn. So I'm Brent Blair. I'm the SVP of Technology. I've been with Encompass now for just about 26 years. And all that time, we've been on a multi-value system. About 7 years ago or so, we switched over to JBase, and we've been using that going forward. Just a little bit about Encompass. We're a distributor of repair parts and accessories for basically every product in the home, from appliance, consumer electronics, lawn and garden, anything you can think of. We got about 600 team members, probably 300 brands. We're spread across 9 locations. We've got about 10 million SKUs, and about 400,000 of those are stocked. So real quick, as far as where we started, we were 100% green screen. We didn't have any e-commerce website, no external services. We had some traditional EDI. All of our servers were local, and they probably could not have been in a worse place, such as Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Not the best place to have any servers. So we worked really close with Zumasys, Corey, and some other folks over there, and we made some tough decisions and decided it was time to switch over. So they worked and helped us not only virtualize. So our first step was really to virtualize all of our physical servers and get them out of the local, server room, and get them up to private cloud. And so we are off in a switch data center out in Las Vegas, which is a tier 5 data center. So I think they've got the DoD and some other folks in there. So if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. We also, once we got everything stable and running with the VMs on the existing systems that we had, then we took the next step and pushed over to JBase. So that obviously took some time to get all that completed. Once we got to JBase, I think Corey at some point got tired of hearing from me, but we kept calling and wanted to make adjustments and changes to some of the things so that we could really push on modernizing and moving forward. So we worked together, and we are using for our development VS Code, which there are some plugins and hooks that you can use to do all of the PICK development. That's done us several things for us in combination with having taken advantage of JBase's object-oriented programming. So that's allowed, one thing that does is it allows easy conversion from JSON to objects and from objects back to JSON. And the other big thing it does is it kind of prevents, it's made it easier for us to acquire younger talent on the developer side, because they're able to use more of a modern language and tool set. So they don't necessarily have to understand everything about the multi-value architecture and structure, because they can use objects, which they're all taught in school, and that's pretty native to them. And pretty much all of them can use VS Code, and if not, that's a really simple lift to get to. Some of the other things we've done, we've switched over to GitHub. So we have all of our code versioning and our not only the versioning, but our rollout, so we can move from dev to production, and both the systems talk to GitHub and move code up and back. That's been very helpful for us. We also use JAgent, which is JBase's web server, or it can handle JSON requests and convert them and return them. So that's allowed us to build full REST services that are external for some of our partners. as well as driving REST APIs that drive our actual website. So that allows us to kind of separate those layers, and we can have a front end, which now we're running Next.js, which is another modern language on the web front end. But that just talks to our REST services that all come out of our multi-value database, which, obviously nobody knows is there, and it doesn't really matter. We've used curl, inside of there to be able to make external JSON requests to customers, partners, other external services that have helped us take advantage where these services have things that, we don't want to go rebuild and start over on. We can take advantage of those services. We also use it to drive our intranet. So that's really replaced a large portion, not 100%, but a large portion of our green screen interaction, which also makes it easier to train the employees. So our customer service agents, they just come in, they're using a web interface. They don't really even know what's behind there, and it doesn't matter to them. We've also got fully documented external APIs through Swagger Hub. So that's allowed us to have customers integrate directly with our REST services, and we, outside of issuing them credentials and maybe helping with some of the testing or test scenarios, we really don't talk to them. They can go look at the documentation. It's got all the examples and code, and they can pull that right into their system. We're serving probably about an average of 2.7 million requests a day through JAgent, which are dips from either our website or other external services, as well as partners coming in through REST to answer those requests. We're also taking advantage, as I mentioned, of some of the external services. So, like we don't have to start over and build them from scratch. So some of the things are, we have JBase integrated completely with Microsoft Teams. So that allows us to monitor everything that's happening on the system, and it can send out messages to our team, the IT folks, about what's going on. So for instance, if I don't know if they're called phantoms everywhere, but either a phantom or background process, if that drops into debugger or hangs up or isn't processing anything, it sends out messages to the team, and they can quickly react to that and get those repaired. We're exporting all of our data to a data warehouse. We're using SQL right now. But that allows us to hook in and use modern front ends for BI and other analysis. We've also been able to use some of these services to hook into an automation system. So we have a full directed conveyor with print and apply. So we can put the package on the box or on the conveyor. JBase has already reached out and talked to it and told it how to route. It routes where it needs to go. It passes a scale with a weight and dimensioner and sends it into our system. We call out to Swanleap, which is our TMS. It gets all the shipping information, rate shops it, gets all the label information, and sends it back to the conveyor. And the conveyor print and applies the labels on the boxes as they're moving through it. So we don't have to do any of the shipping anymore in some of our larger facilities. It's allowed us to hook in with Stripe, so we do all our credit card processing through that, including physical terminals for in-store sales. That allows us to say fully PCI compliant, so we're not storing anything, everything's tokenized. We have no credit card details whatsoever. Another big one that I could never even dream of understanding tax code and calculation. So we hook up with Avatax or Avalara, and they do all of those calculations for us. It makes no difference to us. They manage all the tax certificates and statuses. We just, whenever we want to do it, we call them for an order. It tells us what to charge for tax. We commit it as an invoice, and we're done. And if there's ever a tax audit, we just tell them we use Avatax. We can send them some reports, and that's pretty much the extent of tax audit for us. What's next? We're looking to interface in the next couple of months with robots that will be running around the warehouse and assisting some of our employees with picking parts and potentially doing put away for stock. We're also looking to interface with an external partner for directed put away that can do visual analysis and heat maps and things on the warehouse to try to drive more efficiency and get all the high moving parts with reducing any travel as much as possible. So really, in conclusion, I mean, I know that's kind of a lot to go through, and we certainly didn't accomplish this overnight. It took some time and some strategy, but I think it's definitely worth it. And I think it's it's very important to focus on modernizing and being able to take advantage of these other systems and integrations for efficiency, so that you don't get passed up by the competition. That's all I had. Mike?
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. You've been at it for years at this point. What percentage of the way done would you say you are?
I don't know if you're ever really done.
Yeah. And I think that's a key point to recognize, right? I saw in chat some people saying it would be nice to know how we can do this painlessly, maybe quick or efficiently. And I think the point is, like most things, it's going to be a process. It's going to be a journey. You have to reconcile that you'll be on it for a while. So it's important at the beginning to set the direction, to make sure the vision is shared, and understand that organizationally, you're not going to get there overnight, but that strategically you can break down the journey to start to have incremental milestones where the organization feels benefit from it, right? And then, you're just on a process that becomes a way to move forward and allow the organization to feel like you're moving forward, rather than feeling maybe like you're stuck in the mud or treading water or just, worried about the unknown. So that becomes inaction, which, as Corey was saying earlier too, is not a great spot. So I love that. Modernization is a journey, not a destination. That's exactly right. So let's skip ahead here. Just kind of kicking back to the 4 ways document, one of the components was breaking down the state of IT debt in your organization and figuring out how you start to apply some DevOps principles. I think just to stay high level with it, right, you're going to look at all these different components of things that you have in place or don't have in place, and you're going to decide what order it makes sense to add them, focus on them, improve them. And it really just is going to depend organizationally based off of where you're at currently and what's going to generate the best return for the business. So, if you're going into this conversation net new, I would caution you on making any big decisions until you have a strong understanding of what you do well and what you don't do well. And from there, you can assess where, the focus is going to add the best value to the organization. And don't try to make those decisions in a vacuum, right? Identify who your key stakeholders are internally and include them in the conversation, and include external stakeholders in the conversation where necessary, and understand it's not going to be an overnight thing, right? Along the way, after the 4 ways document, we worked up some other materials here around modernization, how to make some of these decisions. We're happy to share this stuff out after the session. I'm not going to, spend a ton of time talking about all the bullet points off this slide, but, remembering there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. That's the theme here. So your application of this guide or any other guide, anything else we've talked about, really depends on your assessment for where you're at today and where your organization needs you to be moving forward, right? And there's not going to be one answer that's consistent for everybody. So we put this together. This it goes back to how we broke down the process ourselves after we started this new chapter of the business, focusing on vertical ERP solutions, right? And how to carry that forward and begin to implement our own modernization recipe. So use it in full, in part, whatever. It's helpful there. Just, kind of keying off that theme. Sometimes a rip and replace makes sense at the end of the day. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you have, 30 years of ironclad business logic that everybody agrees works very well for the organization, and your data model is perfect, and you're not really, you don't have any weird files in your system that are blending customer objects with sales order objects. Everything is nice and cleanly organized, and it's easy to maintain and extend and everything, but it's the interface that's the problem. So it really just depends on assessing how well you're delivering value to the organization, functioning as the database, functioning as the brain of the organization, which is your business logic, and then the interface into all of that, and identifying, you know, where the best value add is going to be in terms of trying to modernize something. And again, I would say everything can be on the table here for you. It's a mistake to assume just because something's been done a certain way that it should continue to be done that way, right? Be open and honest to what's working well and what's not working well. And make sure you have the business buy-in, because you don't want to be, it's enough of a technical journey to be modernizing, like we're talking about here, like Brent was talking about in their experience. You don't want to have to be fighting political battles along the way organizationally. That's just going to suck up time and distract from the real work of adding real value to everybody. So make sure you have that buy-in. For us, looks like people waiting in the lobby. So for us going into it, it was really reconciling, hey, you know, we now own and operate Rover ERP and several other platforms, and these customers are all running on their own custom version somewhere out in the wild. So that's not really going to be scalable. We need to try to consolidate things to simplify maintenance and support and evolution of the framework. So we thought about how we wanted to centralize that stuff, how we wanted to manage documentation, distribution, source control management. You know, as the web began to take shape, how do we avoid having to deploy a web server for everybody and have to get into on-premise environments? You know, how could we structure this thing in a way that gave us the flexibility to carry everybody forward without forcing everybody to have to make a change to their current state, right? And that's like, that process is really how we unpacked how to attack things from the Rover perspective to bring it forward. And it was really, you know, a way to kind of cleanly maintain that separation of things and to allow that separation of things to give us the opportunity to maintain the database or the business logic or the interface and extend each of those things, right, without a bunch of pain, or to potentially replace, right? If you're at a spot where your business logic is over here and the database is over here, and you've got your interface over on the side and all it's doing is talking to REST APIs, your reality is that you might spend the next 5 years building out some nice new web interface based off of Nuxt or Next or Vue or React or something like that. But in 10 years, it might make sense to look at a different framework, and you can more easily adopt that framework because you have separated everything else out. So it just allows you to better maintain the entire system when you break it down and put that stuff into the different buckets.
Just really quick, Mike, on that.
Go ahead.
You had mentioned jumping between those. So we actually just went through a full reskin of our website. So, you know, marketing wanted to, you know, put a new paint job on it. So at the same time, we decided to switch from a PHP front end to Next.js. We weren't really involved in that at all. We had some consultants that did the front side of it, but because we had the REST services already serving the PHP front end before, they just hooked into what was there, and we didn't really make any changes. Everything was already documented and they could see everything. So it made that transition a lot easier and also prevented us from having to stop and do that internally. We were able to bring on a contractor to take care of that for us.
Yeah, it's fantastic, right? It starts to, conversations that used to feel painful start to feel much easier, and it becomes much easier for people to see the path to quick wins and success there because of the time spent on strengthening the foundation of things, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to break from the slides here for a second. It looks like we've got some good back and forth going in chat. Corey, I think you're on top of that.
Yeah, and we can keep it flowing. And again, I'm happy to take questions, and we will have a Q&A with everybody on the panel to talk through it. We'll just work through the questions on chat and then bring them up and have the team address it.
So real quick, and this is very rudimentary, it's from several years ago now, right? But as part of our unpacking of the current state of Rover, as we were transitioning into this, it was like, hey, let's reconcile how the architecture looks right now, which was really a total disconnected, series of bunch of these ERP nodes everywhere, right? No interrelation to one another at all, each running their own different version of the ERP. And so to introduce a newer, modern standard framework around everything for the product, we had to come up with a way to be able to communicate with them, but to also better control the conversation and the output and the extensibility of all of that. And so that's where this hub and spoke high level architecture was born. And that's served very well for us for a lot of reasons. This allowed us to begin modernizing front ends, integrating to other third parties, creating those separations between business logic, database, everything else to improve the maintainability of things, while not having to go in and do a total rip and replace for each of the siloed ERP nodes out in the wild. And what it did for us, even though this was based around Rover ERP and its reality, was it opened the door for systems, ERP nodes that aren't running on Rover, right? So your version of this is going to look different based off of your organization and your needs, but it kind of goes back to the point of, as you're going into the process, you really need to sit down and think about what you have, what you're trying to accomplish. And that could be a very overwhelming thing. So I think it makes sense to try to organize that into those three big buckets of database and business logic and presentation layer stuff. And if you can be thinking about that map and what it looks like, not everybody in the audience is running a vertical application company like Zumasys. So you might not need as complicated of a high level architecture of things, and you might be able to go straight to that breakdown of, do we like our data model, or do we really struggle with unexplained dictionaries and poorly constructed files and things like that? Do we have great business logic, or is it a pain in the butt every time the business wants something to work differently for us to go in and tweak the process to make it work the way they want it? Do we have great presentation? Is everything at console? Do we have web interfaces already? Do we have desktop interfaces somewhere? You got to reconcile all of that. For us, what you see here is.
Mike, I just want to jump in there.
Yeah, go for
it. When you mentioned as you were going through that visual, I think you and I have sat down and gone through that early when I got here 20 months ago or 18 months ago. Just so everybody understands, once you see that kind of understanding, like a service-oriented architecture that you may want to put in place, you kind of went through the steps pretty quickly, but those are like 6 months of steps. So, you kind of, for me, it was anyway, to understand where I need to go and then start to backtrack as to how do I even get to that level. So just, for those in there, it's not a 2-hour working session. It's multiple sessions. It's some thought leadership and understanding and talking with various experts and using your own experience to try and get through. All right, where do I start? How do I get there? I know where I need to go. Once you've made that decision, then it's creating that roadmap or various roadmaps to get there. And just to chime in quickly on that can take some time to do, but it's well worth the time to get you to the next level, moving through and eventually to where Brent's at.
I think it's a great point, and it really speaks to the audience, no matter where you're at in that journey, right? If you're net new to the organization and trying to understand everything they've got and unpack the best way forward, or if you've been there for 30 years and you know where all the skeletons are buried, but you're still questioning where to take things next, like no matter how you're entering into that conversation, you're going to have unique perspective and experience and strengths to draw on to apply to the conversation. And you'll have unique challenges that you face while you're undergoing that process. And regardless of which side you fall on, it won't end up being an overnight thing. Whether we're talking about just making the decision on the direction to be going, or certainly then beginning to deploy what's necessary to make the changes to go in that direction. So fantastic points, Shawn. Thank you. If that first page I was showing you spoke to the high level decision we made around how to begin architecting things, what I had queued up here next is just to show you Rover ERP as it has evolved on the desktop side during our ownership. So we followed through on some work to build out a .NET framework based version of the desktop client, which you see here, which was, other than being a framework shift for the Rover ERP interface, was really a lift and shift of all of the existing ERP forms and processes and reports and things like that. It was putting them under a new skin in a more maintainable framework. So that users of the ERP could adopt this, but not necessarily have to be retrained on process flows. So Rover, when we inherited it, when we took it on, inherited is probably not the right word there, was already in a place where they had modernized things and brought things forward to a GUI, but the business processes had not necessarily been rethought recently. And I wanted to showcase this just because when I show you a web interface in a minute, you'll start to see where we decided in moving to the web to avoid doing a straight lift and shift of the existing processes and functions, and instead to try to reimagine how the work could be offered to users in the web in more of a streamlined fashion. So yeah, again, like a sales demo around this stuff is going to be hours and hours in and of itself. But if we just looked at like how a user would, in one of the more simple use cases, enter a sales order, fulfill that sales order, and then take payment for the order in Rover Desktop today, a user is going to have to interact with, 5 or 6 different forms, starting with sales order entry, to be configuring the order, doing all your order writing the way that you need, and then progressing to ship.e and ship.e2 to round out packaging of the shipments and everything, and then processing, which then happens in ship.p1. So now I'm 4 forms in. If I needed to tinker at all with the invoice, the AR record that's created as an output of that, I'm doing that through AR.e. And then finally, to be receiving payment against this at some point, that's over in cash.e. And so if you were observing a Rover desktop user in the wild, even though Rover ERP had been modernized to a desktop GUI, right, it's very common to see a user with forms all over their windows and multiple monitors, right? And they're just having to tab around and move around constantly because they might be doing a thing, but that thing often ended up connected to another thing, which had to be done somewhere else and somewhere else and somewhere else, right? And that's where we looked at it and said, we don't want to, a lot of you in the audience are thinking about how do you modernize your interfaces because you deal with training lead time required to train people on green screen interfaces. This was kind of the same, but a little different, just in terms of, even though it's GUI based, it's still a step-by-step comprehensive process. And there's some technical debt, training debt to bringing new users into the organization and showing them how to work through the ERP in this world of Windows forms. So close that, and bring this over. And so, all those forms that I had pulled up in the desktop, all of that ends up serviceable through this one page on the web application, part of what we call Rover Business Suite, to separate a little bit from Rover ERP and acknowledge the fact that you don't have to be running on Rover ERP on your back end to be using this. We have many customers today that are not. Some that are running on other ERPs that we own, some that are running on ERPs that we don't own. But from here, I can find a customer in the system. I can create quotes or orders. I didn't even get into quoting and opportunities on the other side of things. Let's pick a different address here real quick. Good. I can fill out my order header information. I don't need to change anything there. We can add a couple things to the order. If I needed to manipulate anything in the shopping cart, I could do that, but we'll leave it as is, create the order. This will actually create it. This piece is now pulling me along. So we can say include ship. I'm not having to go into ship.e and ship.e2 and ship.p1. I've got an invoice now that's in hand. I can go take a payment for this in full. We'll just say I'm taking a cash payment, submit that from one spot without having to navigate around the web application, without having to go into the desktop and open up a bunch of different forms and remember record IDs to go from one form to another. We've got this single pane of glass over here to pull the user through the process and optionality around all of it to fit the flow of the business in question. So some of the businesses that are using this follow that process exactly as I showed. Some do more on the opportunity and quoting management side of things first. Some use this as more of an order will call and payment processing point of sale desk type scenario. Some use it in retail stores where the customer is walking in, going up to checkout, building the order, paying for it on the fly. It's composable and flexible, all based around existing ERP logic, but with a twist on the presentation. That twist being, we want to be giving business users these single panes of glass to do their job, to make it easier to train somebody. We don't want you to have to train somebody to go, okay, go here, do this thing, then go over there, do this thing. Oh, cool, I'm ready to take the payment. Now I need to go into the customers module or the accounting module or something and go do something else over there. It's just the journey plays out right in front of them, which as an output of that modernization effort makes it a lot easier for these companies to bring new people into the process.
I think just real quick on that, and I know we've got 5 minutes and we want to get some Q&A. The other thing that Mike didn't necessarily mention is like in Rover Business Suite and what we've done with some of our customers that come from a green screen AccuTerm is we've incorporated the ability to move fast on the keyboard, incorporated that functionality into the web app so that it's not just now it's much slower, this is more painful for me, I hate this, I can't use it. We've incorporated into the application and the user experience so that it can take that speed and bring it through.
That's correct. I didn't show too many of the keyboard functions in the shopping cart, but yeah, we've got those buried within the interface too for people that want to stay 10 key. And there's a lot of scan gun engagement stuff too for the people using those in the process. So it's really a nice flexible medium for things. We think it's the best choice. So we have a few more slides here. I mean, it's in production in the wild, in use with a number of different companies, again, some of which are running on Rover ERP and some that are not. So it's been a very positive thing for us so far, and will continue to be the path forward for the product and the customer base. Yeah, I think given the amount of time that we have left, Q&A, I think would be great here. We've got a challenge here.
Yeah, the call to action is go ahead and type modernize into the chat if you'd like us to follow up with you and set up the time where we can go through and create a modernization plan with you. Again, from that, you can take it, like I said to Mark, you can take it and you can bring it to someone else. We can guide you on some other people that are out there that we've worked with in the past on these modernization efforts. You can take it and use your own resources, or you can engage with Zumasys in order to help you on that path and utilize Rover Business Suite. We just want to be a partner out there that's helping you guys on the path, a thought leader, and just share our own experiences and the experiences of people like Shawn and Brent, and there's so many more that are going through the same thing that you're going through. They're on that journey, right? And they're at different places in that journey, but we want to be able to help you through it. So right now we'll give it a couple of minutes, but does anybody have any questions? Go ahead and hit it in the chat. And if you would like for Bill and the team to reach out and dive into kind of what modernization looks like for organization, go ahead and type that in the chat. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here. And again, thank you to Shawn, thank you to Brent. Again, we really appreciate you guys sharing the stories here. All right, everyone, that's it.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks.
Be well. Have a great week.